Well, with that, I'll call this meeting, call to order this regular meeting of the Urban Renewal Agency. It is August 27th. I am Allison Besenzi, Chair of the Urban Renewal Agency, and let's do a roll call. Do we have Vice Chair Rick Van Aken?
Present.
Board Member Lisa Garcia?
Present.
Board Member Julie Evans? She had emailed about her absence. And Board Member Kevin Stewart? Absent. Okay, we do have a quorum. Which is, thank you. First order on the agenda is the approval of minutes. We have first up the minutes from April 23rd's regular meeting. Did anyone have any questions, clarifications, comments, suggestions for the April meetings?
I do have a comment for both of the minutes from April 23rd and July 23rd. They just seem to be, I don't even know who does minutes anymore, but they seem to be lacking just a little bit of detail. Things say like things were discussed or updates were given, but the things that were discussed and the updates are given are not part of the record. So I would just like to state in the future, I would request that just a little bit more detail is given. But I move to a motion to approve them.
Both of them?
Yes.
With that note, okay. I guess before we approve, I had the same note. I think it would be helpful if at least some specificity to the comment was given, like if it says, for example, public comment gave some background on his housing experience or something like that, but it would be helpful if it said in which direction or which suggestions, like more specific on suggestions given in the public comments, and then also in discussion comments and questions from the board. With that in mind, I did wonder if it made sense for us to budget for a secretary, because I know in the past that's how we did minutes and we're able to do them with more detail. And since the city is obviously very busy, I think as a board, we could discuss paying for a secretary going forward, if that would help give some more detailed minutes, especially now that we've gotten so great with online recordings being available. The secretary could just do it in their own time. So I guess we can continue that discussion, but for now, we have a motion to approve the minutes. Do I have a second?
I will second.
Okay. All in
Even though I
favor?
wasn't present at either meeting, but I
Okay.
can read the minutes, so since they are.
Those recordings. All in favor, okay, those minutes are approved for the records.
Okay.
Next section, new business. Discussion regarding board membership. Evan Stewart has expressed that he would like to resign from the board effective immediately. So I'd like to open up that board seat.
You need a motion to that.
Do we need a motion if someone decides on their own?
No, I would say we have a vacancy and
We have a
so
vacancy.
I will, staff will advertise
I-
that.
I would first of all ask though, because I intend to do it in my own case.
Yes,
It's really important that people submit resignations in writing. So that you have it documented, so you don't have it questioned later or whatever.
he did send it by email.
Or you do have an email.
I have an email from him, yep.
It's
Um,
in writing, some writing.
it's in writing, yep, it wasn't to everyone. I think, yes, going forward, best practices would probably be for someone to email the entire board or bring it up at a meeting. Just so everyone's aware at the same time. But that is an open board seat.
Which, do you want me to speak about? mine?
Yes, Rick, I would like Rick's
So,
has been up for over a
in
year.
addition to that, I feel like, you really need to find two more board members. It's unfortunate that Julie's not able to be here today, but you need to find board members that can be here on a regular basis. First of all, I wasn't here. I wasn't in town for the April meeting at all. I won't be in town for this next meeting, the end of this month. end of September, so. That said, I, as much as I appreciate Allison's attempts to keep me posted and stuff like that, I'm just sorry to say, I just don't feel like this is in my wheelhouse, so to speak, and not really in a major field of interest for me. And so I would like to, I'll put it this way, offer my resignation as soon as possible, not immediately, but I will put that in an email to you, but at the same time, I understand the need, like today, you can't get any business done if you don't have a quorum. And it's important that we be able to take care of business. And so I'm willing to hang in there until we find a replacement, a trainee.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you. And I do think it'll be great to open up the vacancies at the same time and hope that we get a flood of applications, and if
Mhm.
we're able to narrow it down to 2, that would be wonderful, and we can just
No.
onboard at the same time.
We previously had other people express interest, Tom, for example, didn't he?
We have, yes, we have an
So-
email with one, and we have a previous applicant who withdrew her application, actually, and we went, and at the same time, we were deciding between her and Julie, so it worked out that Julie could join. But
Good.
we do have someone that will probably apply that has been to meetings.
Mhm.
So we'll open up those 2 board seats. This wasn't specifically on the agenda, but I'm wondering if I could entertain a motion to transfer the vice chair position to Lisa Garcia, because she will be sticking with the board.
Mhm.
I have a motion.
I would, so,
Can you
Can I
second
second
that?
my
I
own?
think you can. Second it. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thank you so much, Rick,
sure.
for all you've done with us. So that is all I had to say immediately on the board membership discussion. I also wanted to note that in our bylaws, there's a potential to update our bylaws to expand membership. I think that's a problem we might have in the future if and as we can grow our projects. And as the budget grows, I don't think it would be wise to expect 4 people, for example, to join us now, but I just think that's something to consider if we do get a lot of great applicants, or as we talk about these vacancies. Just try and draw up as many interested people as possible, because there may be potential for subcommittee volunteering in the near term as well. Even if they're not directly on the board, they could be coming to meetings as public. Okay. Thank you all. Are there any public comments before I open up to the next section of the budget?
I thought Jack was gonna stand up and say, I volunteer. No? Oh, be darned. Okay.
Jack's already on the historic preservation board. We try not to double up board
Yeah.
members.
Oh, well, that man's capable of a lot of things.
He's doing his time. in
I'm
community
sure.
service.
Anything else?
We'll move on to section 4. Just for discussion of budget priorities. Was everyone able to take a look at the staff report in the agenda?
Yes.
Excellent. Those are some suggestions. Also in the downtown master plan, I believe we're all familiar with the drafts of that, and then the strategy write-up we had from last week. I don't know, Rick, were you able to see this?
No, I didn't see this.
I'll let you look at that maybe for a second while I
Well, that's
pull up.
because this was discussed in
That was at the July meeting.
July.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I missed July just because I don't think I even realized it was happening. I just doesn't come up high on my radar, I guess, sometimes. Anyway.
How are you running the section? You just comment?
I was gonna just let, Rick, if, did you already, do you wanna read that before anything, or do you feel comfortable just diving into this next section and having a
Well,
open discussion?
I'm comfortable with, getting into the, discussion.
Okay, great. I would like to start with Julie's, because she sent them my emails and she knew she was gonna be out.
Right,
Very kind of her.
for remarks.
Here we go. Top priority is how, this is from Julie Evans, board member. Top priority is housing. I don't know what is limiting applications for the residential rehab grants, and I also wonder about the feasibility of URA buying property and developing housing, and would love to have or hear a discussion on these topics, but these concerns don't change the priority of this item. Next is infrastructure. As unglamorous as it is, this item to me is as important as housing. Then is downtown programming, which would be great, but isn't as critical as the first two items. Maybe we could take some first steps in this area. Economic development seems to be better handled by other organizations like the BID and or Chamber of Commerce. Here's Julie's. Does anybody else have notes they want to rifle off like that, or would you rather have an open discussion? Brenda?
I don't have a ranking yet,
Okay.
exactly, but I do have thoughts.
Sure.
Yeah, so first of all, thank you, Grant, for putting the staff report together. I think my thoughts for the budget moving forward have changed a bit than, well, I've always been interested in us being a bit more proactive than reactive, which I would love to see. But just thinking about it more recently and due to the low level of grant applications that we've had, both for the housing rehabilitation program and kind of sort of for the facade program, I think we only have two. And that we're already 2 months into our fiscal year, and knowing that facade grants usually kind of roll forward and probably wouldn't, besides the two we already have, be part of this fiscal year anyway, potentially. I would just personally like to see us, probably put grant support lower in the ranking, just to give us an opportunity to approach perhaps housing in a new way, through either purchasing land or just, yeah, just thinking of new ways to be proactive, rather than waiting for people to come to us, read the guidelines, have conversations with the city, etc. So I would say right now, I would put grant support at the lowest level if I had to start ranking, but generally, I would just love to see us be more proactive. This is also not to say that we won't support grants, you know, other grants. In August, so.
Rick, do you want me to go or you want to go?
Why don't you go?
Okay. I had a thought with the facade grants in particular. Because the housing and facade grants are both grant programs and they're both our only grant programs right now. I see how we are lumping them together, but I also feel like we need to keep them separate, obviously, but then both of them, I think we should have a very clear cap on the amount we give. Right now, we have a cap on the amount per project, and obviously we have a cap of our whole entire budget to give. But I really thought it would be great, and it would help maybe shift our mindset proactively and help businesses and building owners kind of rally themselves to get a slot. So if we said we're going to do 2 major facade grants per year, so that's up to $200,000 total, and then we did an unknown number of smaller facade and beautification projects, I would like to include some projects that might not be traditionally facade, but like really do help beautify the streets in the area, in that same sort of category as a percentage of our budget. And then those projects would be more in like the 5, 10, maybe $20,000 range. Maybe with those smaller projects, we can offer a higher percentage. Like right now, we're doing up to $1,000 at 100%. Maybe we can, this is on the record, but this is not the decision. It's just an idea. Like up to $5,000, you get 100% reimbursement. Or for certain projects, we could say like for sign removal, 100%. Like, I think we could be more proactive on what exactly we want to see in the facade requests and then limit the number of projects we can fund per year and communicate that effectively so that people are encouraged, like, oh, if someone knows the Lincoln School is already working on a big project, they might get themselves prepared for the next year. And just really having people plan in advance so that we have an idea of what's coming down the pipeline. I think, so yeah, that's my thought on the facade beautification section. I kind of had it at like 30% of our budget. The next section I considered is housing. Also, I thought could be about 30%. Just because I think housing is so important. I don't think that all downtown in the URA district is going to be able to solve all the problems. So I was thinking the last couple of weeks, trying to be creative about how we approach the housing. Like trying to get applications to come through and so that we can start seeding the money. And I'm personally really excited about the idea of ADUs in the urban renewal district. I've been in a couple that are within those streets, and I feel as though they're the perfect size and could be workforce housing and walkability to downtown jobs. I feel as though a lot of the housing owners that are creating or may be interested in creating ADUs would also want to better the community and not just be trying to get as much money as possible and want like a good quality, longer term tenant. So at first I was a little skeptical, like I didn't know, I think we all had envisioned like second and third floors becoming housing. And I'm trying to rethink that because it's not happened and really, but like I'm interested in leaning into the ADUs as something we can afford that seems more affordable than like lots of rehabilitation. And then they can be built without closing down the front house. That's the thing, a lot of the problem with the second and third floors is having construction that might disrupt the main business down below. That's just a thought I have on how, like, if we have a set number of housing units we're trying to create within the urban renewal district that helps meet the demand, like, could we put a number on how many ADUs we think we could fund and then really get smart around how much money we can give per unit created. Cause like $30,000 would go a long way for a house owner in creating an ADU. So those are my thoughts on housing. As Lisa mentioned, I'm also very interested though in exploring like a longer term development project with URA with upper level housing and lower level community and or retail commercial space. I think that we could do a lot in showing what's possible and sort of creating more trends towards this type of infill and redevelopment. And I think it would be really wonderful, especially if new members are coming on board with some enthusiasm for that idea, then I think we can get a lot done in that area and sort of, like I said, create that trickle effect and really find and create opportunities that wouldn't happen if not for our funds and energy and interests. And so that part is really exciting to me. And I think we should reserve a significant amount towards that. Also, given that in our current budget, we have this 1.8 million that is just seated in the fund because we haven't had as many, like we've had more budget than we've given out the last several years. So we have this sort of bank of money. So I think there's kind of two ways to approach this budget conversation. One is like, we have this bank of money. How do we want to use it in this next year? And then the second is, how do we keep these things going in the future years with, less money per year? The first one was like facade project. Okay. I kind of went that in an interesting order. Okay, so that was my specific comments on the facade and beautification projects. I also was thinking about how in that category, we could help tackle vacant storefronts. I think we've talked about this before, like, could we have a separate fund for people who want to pilot a project or a business in a storefront like that, or do a short-term winter market or something? This definitely falls more in the economic development category, but it also creates a like really vibrant, really thriving, lower level Main Street. And then those could hopefully grow to be longer term businesses in those locations or in other locations downtown in our district. So I would be interested in, and also talking about that, like piloting those types of projects. And those could be specifically for business, they could be more for arts and education, but just sort of these pop-up opportunities to approach those lease and building owners to say like, hey, this has been vacant for a year. We have these 4 different projects that are looking for a home for these timeframes, and like really trying to create a project around that. I think it would be awesome. I think that might also be helpful to partner with the BID or other organizations that are interested in that type of movement, because you know, maybe we're not equipped to handle that entirely on our own, but I think we can help start that conversation and give some money towards it. I think we should reserve some money for miscellaneous requests, potentially having a secretary, potentially doing research trips. I think, like I was in Missoula this weekend, it would be awesome if we could go once or twice a year to local towns and just be able to like really look at what they're doing and take away good examples that exist and take pictures and be able to share these with the community. Yeah, so the first was like thriving storefronts and building facades. Second was housing. Third, infrastructure and amenities. And my question on that is for Grant. I know that in this work budget estimate, it was 1.2 something for the sidewalk and alley project. I was wondering if we know enough yet to know if like, if that were to be funded, a decision made, you know, based on this fund balance that we have, would a similar number be requested, or do we have any idea of how much money might be requested from the URA in the future for infrastructure?
Well, from a CIP standpoint in the downtown, as far as water, sewer, sidewalks, the city does not have the next phase designed. We do expect that there is the potential that some of the work that we know needs to happen, though is not designed, in the second, third alley is very likely to be undertaken in the next couple of years, but it's not immediately clear if the URA's participation would be needed in that from the city's standpoint. That said, the URA could reasonably expect possibly to think that if there's a project in that area, the applicant might approach the URA, whether they would look for infrastructure support or, you know, housing unit support, I think is kind of up in the air. So yes, roundabout way of saying, yes, there is a chance that it may come, but as far as the city's concerned, you know, we are not bringing it to you folks in the next 12 months.
Okay.
That said, we're starting Parks Master Plan. There may be some projects, and there's also downtown master plan. There may be some, you know, different infrastructure projects that could arise in the URA district from those 2 studies. So I would expect probably some level of infrastructure funding each year, but I don't think it would be nearly to the level that the 1.2 is.
Okay, that's good. All right. Rick, do you have any questions or thoughts on this?
Well, I don't think I have any comments that are going to shed any light to speak of on all of this because I've been so out of the loop, but really interesting thoughts. I really do think it seems like URA just kind of has been kind of stuck in a waiting mode when it comes to the residential grants and facade grants. we're always just sitting, we're just sitting there waiting for somebody to come to us. And there's got to be a way for us to go to them and, and approach them and basically, um, I'm sure some businesses are more approachable than others and things like that, but just the sheer fact that, um, uh, as you say, we see the things like the empty storefronts downtown and, and the, nothing has come of the idea of, second story housing. To speak of, and, so you sit there and you wonder, well, what are we doing wrong? I guess I look at it that way. So one of the thoughts I've had is, it seems to me like, we've done that. I know that, Allison and Lisa have done it, to basically go and ask businesses, what do you need?
Mhm.
What can we do for you? Because I just don't know if they just, if we're not high enough on their radar, or if they they're just reluctant to launch into anything, because, let's face it, it's been a rough few years. And the, you know, and these businesses come and go downtown so fast. And, change locations and stuff like that, and you go, kind of go, well, how can we help resolve that? Because every time they move someplace else, it leaves another vacancy to be filled for a while. I really like the idea that Allison mentioned, was partnering with some other agencies, just because I always feel like that. I remember discussion some time ago about, yeah, we have, we might have 1.8 million. But but it takes no time at all to burn through that, when, if you were actually doing it, and a project. So, and finding space to do any kind of, um, how would we find the space to do housing? But keep thinking that there are those additional units to be built, if we can just, I don't know, get somebody to pull the trigger. Um, am I mistaken, and do I understand right, that we're not talking about, us building them and owning them as the city necessarily, right?
I think we could be talking about that.
It could be that, it could be bought and then sold, it could be partnership with, this is just brainstorming, like with the school district needing teacher housing. There could
Yeah,
be
okay.
ways to handle that, I know that the city of the URA would never be managing the tenants. But could own the
Hmm.
land.
Yeah, there's lots of options if we, do we need broader authorization to do some of these things that we've talked about? Or,
Insofar as the URA does not incur debt, it does not need much authorization beyond this board.
I always feel like, it's, we're in a relatively powerful position to make some things happen. And how come they haven't, I guess?
I think.
But I
that-
don't think I'm any help with that. It's part of the reason why I think I should vacate. Let somebody step in that really sinks their teeth into this kind of stuff.
It's been an evolution over the last 4 years I've been on the board where we've had almost a full overturn of members, and so that takes catching up and understanding what's possible. Then new city manager and team coming on board, really letting us know what the URA is capable of, because I think we had a pretty limited purview in the previous tenure of city manager, and a lot of the money was going to these capital projects that are now, this would be, as Grant said, the last leg of that phase. And so this is like a new frontier, not new, because this is why the URA was created 20+ years ago, was for this frontier to be able to do these types of projects. And so we're just sort of re-examining what's worked, what's not, how can we be more effective? And I hear from several different angles that we can and should be more proactive, both in approaching the people that would be able to use these funds, and then in creating the developments or the programs that we want to see happen, and like just doing them versus creating an idea and waiting for people to apply and hoping they apply. But that was based off people, well, the facade grant, I think, needs to continue happening because I think it is very successful. It's just unpredictable.
Mhm.
And maybe with different supplies being, like, I know the windows at the Danforth, it's just been such a long process for them to get their quotes back, and it's just taking a while. So they're interested, they just can't apply. So there's like, because we're a reimbursement, we're limited on when we can interact with these projects, and so we get them at the very end. So I think that's part of the reason facade grant has program is just always gonna be spotty. And then housing, I think everyone in this city is just trying to figure out how to help. And we're doing our part by listening, responding, pivoting, that's kind of why we're having these meetings. Even when there's no applications to vote on, is sort of to figure out our other potential strategies and keep the conversation moving forward.
And if I could offer, this is a relatively common situation for URAs to find themselves in as they mature and as the district matures, because a lot of that easy, low-hanging fruit type of work, whether it's facade improvements or capital improvement projects, that's typically the work that occurs in the first 5 or 10 years of the URA. And then once, that level of infrastructure and facades, storefronts kind of are brought up to a certain level, then URAs typically start to look in other directions and say, okay, in our case, we've got 10 years left. And the increment has really come up a bit. And so this is a time when URAs typically can start to pursue some other projects that may, transform the district in other ways. And so whether it is projects from the downtown master plan or the parks master plan, I think that the URA is at a very interesting and somewhat exciting point where the easy work has been done. Now there are some more transformative projects that might sit in front of you for the next 10 years, and you're actually generating the revenue because of your earlier work to fund some of that transformative work in the second half of the district's life. So I've seen this play out in other places before.
Do you have additional comments?
Yeah.
Thank you for that input, Grant. Just a few more thoughts that we've all been talking. Allison, you mentioned vibrancy, and I forgot that I had that in my own notes. Like low cost, easy way type of projects. I don't know what category that would fit in. Maybe that's capital infrastructure, I'm not sure, but there were a lot of really lovely public comments last month as well, that people who got up and stood up and reminded us that even the people who are interested in housing creation, that you can't underestimate vibrancy projects, and those are often low cost, and that's what keeps people happy and keeps people wandering around downtown, things that make it beautiful, whether that's flower pots or lights or what have you. So I think those are important. And just as we talk about housing, this is like, because so many things are on a rolling basis, and even if we are proactive, I feel like I just want us to keep in mind for this discussion, like this is the fiscal year 2024, 2025 that we're already in. And I feel like even if we're proactive and speak to people who want to do ADUs, and those conversations are going to take months, and that would actually probably come out of 2025, 2026, once we
Mhm.
reimburse people.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to keep that top of mind for us, like this is the year that already started 2 months ago. So I think that's important to think of when we're talking about being proactive, is like, you know, we're already in the year that's happening, and a lot of these projects take a long time to develop, so if that means realistically, we probably won't distribute any residential rehab funds 2024, 2025. Then let's like think about that, I guess, as we're ranking. And Grant, I just had a question for you. For downtown programming and economic development, could you give me like a couple examples of what the city, how the city would define those two? Is economic development like the downtown master plan, or?
It certainly can be, you know, I think as kind of the downtown programming, I think we've all heard from some existing programmers, whether it's, holiday lights or some things like that. Hanging baskets, I think, is one that's come up kind of publicly there. So that's kind of what I think of in that downtown beautification.
So that-
Economic development can take several different forms. Whether it is creating events in the downtown, or at least partially funding events. Event support, funding for event support is one. There are occasions when businesses seek to relocate into the URA district, and they may need some kind of support in that business attraction relocation process. I think I see that happen in the economic development world. There are, I have seen partners partner with the URA to fund whether they're workforce training programs or just other type of programs that help with that business attraction / retention. That's really what comes to mind for economic development that I've seen in the past. And I will say, my office, we certainly do get some inquiries about business relocation to the URA district. And like some meaningful business relocation as well. Office space really seems to be the main constraint, really commercial space. There's not really much vacancy in the downtown, especially for businesses of much size there. So, but that could come into play if a business were to find an existing property that might need some modifications, whatnot, to support some employment base in the district. I think that could come into play there.
Relocation from the city of Livingston outside the UR district, or
Or
Other
from
towns.
outside of the city or outside of the district to within the district. Yeah, your funding typically should be spent in the district.
yeah.
And
So I just
yeah.
more wondering if they're Livingston or Park County businesses, or if they're from elsewhere or online only or whatever that wants to locate in Livingston or in the district.
I've been contacted by both firms from other parts of Montana as well as other parts of Park County.
Been located by what kind of firm?
Pardon?
I was unclear. What, contacted by what kind of firm?
Just different professional service firms, manufacturing firms, just a number of different firms that are looking at this area as a potential, move some jobs into the city and into the URA district
Yeah.
specifically.
As I said, that's the kind of situation where you want to say, how can we help?
Mhm.
Um,
I would like to respond to Lisa's comment about the budget year, because I wonder if once we have agreed upon general percentages or strategies of these different categories, if we didn't have any housing, or if we had maybe one housing application or something like that, that fell into criteria, would we want to keep that budget for next year when it's maybe picked up more, and then we'd have double the money next year for that category? The way we've been holding on to our money, that's why we have a fund balance. Like that, it's sort of like separate balances, so like the housing balance would start next year with some money in it because we didn't use all of it this year. And sort of as much as possible, keep them as separate balances. If these are our set goals and we're all agreeing, and maybe I don't think we're ready to make that decision yet. with the changes coming in membership and with Julie not able to meet today, but I think that's just something we could consider. Like, I don't, we don't have to spend, right? Is that true? We don't have to spend it all. It doesn't go away.
No, it just rolls
It
into
rolls
the
over.
fund balance.
There was a lot of back and forth about that, like use it or lose it. So
You're right.
that could kind of keep us at ease if some things are on the cusp about crossing over, especially with things like housing that are taking a longer time. I, for one, would be really excited to hear from Captain Daly to find out if their ADU strategy makes sense and if there are current people considering ADUs that might be motivated to make them workforce or affordable housing with this type of funding available to them. Just putting that out there for the future. Any other questions, comments in this section?
So just, I guess, from a point of clarification, I heard some talk about, vibrancy grants, beautification grants. We don't have an existing grant program that would work through that, so, I guess, should I take this as some informal guidance to begin potentially working on set of guidelines for such a grant program?
I personally want to figure out, like, to me, the flower baskets, I think that fits more in like. What, I guess I didn't think of it as like downtown programming. I thought of programming as more the events. And I thought of, or like the food truck block, things like that, to me felt like programming more than. The baskets felt like beautification, which maybe could be rolled into facade. I don't know if that would work, but sort of if there's a potential to maybe adjust facade, if that's easiest, or we talked about doing pilot around. I think vibrancy is a really tough word. I think we all can visualize it, but it's really tough to codify it. So like figuring out what we want to call it, doing a request for proposals. And what's exciting about this compared to the facade grants is it can come from anyone motivated to do the work can access this funding, in my opinion, because it's not tied to a specific location, or it will be a location, but not tied to a business per se. So I guess that's, now I'm thinking it through, that's why they'd have to remain separate. I think we need to figure out what we want to call it and what we want it to include, because we also heard like short-term green spaces. There are some things that are very clearly exist, like the lights and the baskets, and then there are other things that we've heard about or maybe seen in the downtown master plan. And then there's a whole category of things that we never even thought about yet that people are going to come up with once they know that they have sort of this call for proposals. So maybe we can create more of a call for proposals structure this time. I don't know, that feels different to me than the facade grant process and housing grant process, because it's not as limiting. We still get to vote on what we feel moves forward with our funding. Obviously, anything can move forward without us, but yeah, what do you guys think?
About the call.
No, about Grant asking if he should start drafting like a new program for something like beautification and vibrancy or greenery or.
I thought that was like part of what we did already, right? And people like kind of knew, because people approach us to help them fund the flower pots and the lights and things like that anyway. I think my only worry about making it like a grant program with guidelines, grant, not you, grant, is yeah, I don't know, then we would have to, I don't know, then what are you know what I mean? I don't know.
Yeah.
You're right, like, I don't know what the definition of it is exactly, so I almost like that it's open-ended and people just approach us and say, hey, I need somebody for lights, and we're like, okay.
But a system exists where we have a call for proposals for sort of general, like we give a direction in a locations, obviously within our bounds. We review and then it enters into like, these are the terms. Do we need,
I think we could probably structure a call for projects that encompassed a lot of what you're talking about. I mean, there will be, some form of guidelines that talks about eligibility in the district and, kind of maximum dollar amounts, maximum reimbursement amounts, this, that, and the other, but I think we can work that into a call for projects format relatively easily.
Okay.
And kind of keep it wide open, but to be clear, no, we don't actually currently have any structured programs or anything for things like flower baskets or lights or any other requests that may come in, which has been, maybe a bit of a limiting factor in the past, but, yeah, I think a call for projects could work. I will say, kind of switching gears a little bit, because I heard, you mentioned the ADUs. There are some zoning wrinkles currently that are not conducive to the creation of ADUs in the central business district. Specifically for the last 3 or 4 years, there's been a prohibition on the creation of non-high density housing in the central business district. No single family homes, no structures of fewer than 3 residential units actually are permitted in the CBD. It was an effort to increase the density in that area. And so because the URA district overlaps with the CBD in large parts, that program might have limited utility absent an accompanying zoning change.
Got it.
Not saying it's not possible, and as Lisa pointed out, it would take some time to get that up and going, and just because of the construction season, right, is ending now, and so we probably wouldn't get many applications in. And that zoning review, we've just awarded the contract, and the public process will start there in the next several months. So the timing could line up fairly well for next construction season or the one after for ADUs, if that is a change that goes through the zoning process.
That's very helpful. I wish where that map that had all the districts outlined separately, maybe we should like blow it up here. Because I don't know with the central business, but I guess central business district. Does that include like B Street, Second Street, all that?
Yes, it includes the eastern half of Third Street. So, and then runs out to, well, for the most part, out to see here, but it fingers out to this area as well.
Okay, so it's largely the same. So any ADUs that exist there were just built before these restrictions existed?
Yeah, it
Okay.
is a new one that came into effect in 2021, if I'm not mistaken, and I apologize for not being able to bring the map up as quickly as I would like to. It's probably that's a very large file. Anyway, yeah, it's the majority of the URA district is central business zone.
Got it. I did not know about restrictions.
Very few people do, actually. It's one that's really only come up in the last couple of months as an issue for many people.
We have a ranking.
Lisa's ready to rank.
All right.
Okay, there are a lot of caveats. Okay, I'll say housing number 1, with the caveat that it's the workforce housing. And that we take a proactive approach. 2, I would say downtown programming using the city's definition of beautification, etc. Because it's, I think, low cost and easy win, and it's nice to have. Top of mind. I'm gonna tie capital improvement and economic development. With the caveat that it also, that we consider the downtown master plan as part of that. And then I'm gonna say grants are last. In the sense that we're reacting to applicants. Off of grants list. Well, number 5.
So I think I captured that. Got housing number 1 for you, and then
Yes.
Beautification, downtown programming 2, infrastructure 3, and then grants and economic development, or excuse me, infrastructure and economic development tied at 3, and then grant support is your number 4, or I guess 5 in that regard.
My question on are you ranking these by level of our prioritization or by money? The percentage of budget.
I'm just talking about priorities.
So like what we want. Okay.
Because
That's a
I
different way
think
to rank.
downtown programming is very important, but like if that's $100,000 total that we distribute
Totally.
throughout the year, then that's. If that- Yeah,
I think that's a great way to look at it. Yeah, cause I was putting 30% of budget, meaning like, I think we should limit. Grant support. I said, I think we should
Yeah.
limit what we do, but I still think it's gonna be about 30% of our budget if we stick within like two big projects, lots of little, or a couple little other projects. And this budget I'm talking about is, it came down to this year's was 838,000. That's, you know, our budget minus the debt, minus the professional services. That does not include the fund balance. So that is extra money that maybe could go into the capital improvement projects and also development or launching something else bigger. Okay. That's good. Where would something like vacant storefront pilot support, that idea, where would that go? Downtown programming, economic development?
Probably include that as economic development.
yeah, I was thinking economic development based on the definition, like.
Okay. That's good.
And so, yeah, I'm saying downtown programming, meaning beautification as the second priority, just because I think it's like, we've talked before about doing things that are like easy win and low cost. And I think that's a nice thing to consider at the top of our priority list, just giving people reasons to come downtown and just be happy and enjoy the space that we have
Mhm.
without having to, do a ton of work or court businesses or what have you for events and stuff.
All right. Thank you. I don't know if we have enough information, like Julie had given us her one, she kind of put housing infrastructure as 1 and 1. I guess if you want to follow in with what Lisa did, like ranking two the same. She mentioned downtown programming is 3, but she didn't mention grant support at all, so. And grant support kind of does fall into housing, so I think we've gotten closer. I think we have still a little bit of clarity to figure out here, but this is very helpful. Could I take this information and create sort of a suggested budget / focus and like ranking system? I mean, there's only 3 of us running. You're still very much a board member and you've had a great history with our board. Would you like to rank the importance of what you'd like to see in the district going
Well,
forward?
actually, right now, I liked the Lisa's ranking was, I mean, it's not complicated, there's, we're really only going 4 or 5 places. But I think, we just because I feel compelled to focus on housing first. You know, that's where priority has to lie.
Right, I'm just struggling to figure out how we can focus on housing without a place to put it. Like if second and third floors don't
Right.
want it, ADUs can't happen. The only other option for us to really contribute to is to develop ourselves. And I don't think we ever plan to do a whole housing
Right.
building, but like having housing on upper floors.
Mhm.
Like, is that what you're thinking when you put housing that high?
I'm thinking, yeah, for us to think of if that means like buying a parcel of land, even if we're not creating the units this year, obviously that would be impossible.
Right,
With
but
fiscal
we're-
year, like proactively taking an approach so that's the first thing we're thinking about is that people
Okay.
who work here can live here and we need to do something about that. That's why I wrote that book one.
Got it. I like that. I just want to clarify that we don't want to just, because what I really want to avoid is giving the funding to things that are going to happen no matter what. And are gonna have workforce housing no matter what. Like, that's great. Those are already happening. So where are we creating the value and creating momentum? And so I agree with you if that's the case. So then we're sort of trying to figure out a proactive solution and how many units that might entail. Putting the residential rehabilitation grant program not on the back burner, it's still there, but it, not, just seeing what comes from it and not forcing it. And then, what do you got second here? Beautification. So then next up, we should really like figure out how we want to call for projects in that so that we get the most diverse, exciting amount of applications that to sift through. And I really think we should link to the downtown master plan with that. Like, if these ideas excite you and you want to see them happen, this is a new grant program up to
Mhm.
maybe like, what's the lights, $50,000 a year? What it was, that's the one that we have a number for, that's, seems like it might be the highest.
My recollection, yeah, it was closer to 30,000 perhaps was.
Maybe say, we're expecting to be able to give grants up to $30,000 to meet these. Yeah, and we're gonna poster.
I'll do a poster when we have info like I did last time.
I think that could be a very effective way to help start to implement some of the downtown master plan elements that are outside of the city's control. Is to identify some of those and then put that out to the community to see what ideas people have with, facilities or property that they control. So. Yeah.
Cool.
Separate note, actually, I forgot to mention this. I don't know if this should be actually included in our priorities, but as part of our budget, if you're putting it together, we keep talking about outreach, which is obviously if we're doing a
Right.
call for proposals, what we're talking about. Just like I don't know how much money we would need. We probably have to calculate mailings or whatever, but like setting aside a budget so we know that we should spend this much money, like actually reaching out to people. And if we do have a priority where we're like, this is what the URA does and stands for, these are the things we want to do. I think that would be nice to communicate to the people who fall within our TIF universe within our urban renewal district so that they're up to date on what we want to do. And if that includes like a call for proposals for beautification, then that might be a nice place to do it. But I think it would be nice to if we have priorities and we're taking a stance that this is like how we want to move forward over the next 5 to 10 years, that we communicate that to the people whose money we use. Tax money anyway.
I definitely agree with that. Without having a meeting between now and September 3rd, is this something that you think could come up at the September 3rd commission meeting where the downtown master plan latest draft is going to be presented?
It may come up in a general sense, because, Andy from Crescendo will do a presentation and he may jump into possible funding sources for some of these projects. But I don't think that will be kind of an initial focus of this presentation. I think he focused a little bit more on that aspect with this group, just because you have that role to play. But no, I expect it will be.
I guess just as a sound bite, if it comes up and people are like, if comments are saying like, where's all the money gonna come from? It could be like a general statement that the URA is trying to figure out how they can support some of these, especially smaller but really impactful efforts.
I'll be happy to mention that.
If
Absolutely.
it comes up, yeah.
And I'm sure I'd be surprised if Andy doesn't mention the URA as a possible funding source. I just don't think that would be one of the main thrusts of this presentation.
Makes sense. Okay. Anything more on this section for now?
Sorry, so next steps, did you say you were gonna take this and put thoughts together for our next meeting?
Yeah, I thought I could just put together like a Excel sheet going off of the one that was included in our agenda, but like being more specific about the other potential sections we might fund, putting numbers to it. Yeah, just to give, and then it doesn't have, that's not final, it's just for us to give feedback on something visually for the next meeting. Does that work as a next step, or do you have any other suggestions?
No, that works for me.
Okay.
Let me know if you want to brainstorm or anything.
No, it helps, just how you just said, like, it helps how you said, like, prioritizing based on our focus versus the money given. Is that is kind of two separate rankings?
Yeah.
Really?
Totally.
Okay, awesome. Closing out that section. Next, we will open up for public commentary. Anyone in the room, if you'd like to comment, please come to our stand and state your name and address for the records. And we have 3 minutes.
Hey, good evening, URA board. City Manager Gager. My name is Catherine Daly. I'm the Park County Housing Coalition Program Manager. And I'm delighted to be here to talk with you a little bit about your priorities and answer some questions about potential investment in ADUs or other strategies that might help the URA meet it in the city's goals for downtown development. Since Chair Vicente asked about ADUs, I'll start there. Just by echoing what City Manager Gager said, which is that there's overlap between the URA district and the central business district. And yeah, you can't have ADUs there currently. The Park County Housing Coalition is rolling out a bunch of ADU programming starting in a couple weeks. We have a free ADU tour in Livingston the evening of September 11th. It starts at the farmers market. So if people wanted to see what ADUs are like, they can participate in that. We also have 23, maybe 24 community members from across Park County, but mostly in Livingston, signed up for a workshop designed to help people understand how to get through the process of designing and constructing an ADU. And what we're hoping at the end of that process is that we'll get some insights from those folks and from other folks who have built ADUs about what would be helpful to them in doing their builds, right? And having those builds contribute to the supply of community housing. So that program will wrap up in December of this year. So at that point, the Park County Housing Coalition might have better information about what kinds of grants or potentially low interest loan programs might better support the creation of accessory dwelling units. I will say that I have heard from other funders that they are also interested in supporting a program like this. And I personally just wonder whether investment in ADUs are going to have sort of the biggest bang for the URA's buck in terms of increasing the taxable value of the district. But I'd be happy to come back in December and share what we've heard from homeowners on that, if that's of interest to the URA board. As far as some other strategies that I'd love to share with you about, I talked to Jill Dunn, who's the business and project manager at the Missoula Redevelopment Agency a few months ago, just about their activities in supporting the creation of housing that's affordable to Missoula residents. And, under MCA, land acquisition is allowed using tax increment financing as well as demolition. And so what they are doing is that they are acquiring land. They're effectively doing a land banking strategy with the city of Missoula, where the city then holds onto the land and then can either sell it or, I'm sorry, this is way longer than 3 minutes.
It's 1 minute shorter than city.
Oh, okay. Sell it, or they can partner with a developer. There's actually like a continuum of options if the city owns land. That's not just the city is the developer or they sell it. There could be a 75-year lease to somebody who develops the project. They could partner with a developer and they could sort of structure the development in accordance with the city's aims, especially now that the downtown master plan exists and there are parcels of land that the community has identified that they would like to see redeveloped into housing or a park, but the land or, whatever other interventions. But the land banking strategy would help you all have that land available so that when developers or other partners, or if the city decides to develop something itself, have the the resources to do so, they can act on that. Because that is a big challenge for housing developers is, a grant comes through, it might be a whole bunch of money, but you have to spend it in a really short amount of time and thinking about trying to meet the property owner, negotiate the sale of the land, complete the sale of the land, and then develop the whole property, and the time span of the grant is really challenging. And so having an entity that has clearly stated goals, say around housing development or parks land or whatever, that has access to land, creates a little bit more space in those transactions for developers, whether they be private or public, nonprofit or for-profit developers can like come in and then access that land and move forward in a timely manner. So that might be a really interesting option to explore. Again, the Missoula Redevelopment Agency and the city of Missoula have been doing that with a great deal of success. And I would be happy to reach out to them and get them in front of you if that's of interest and would be helpful capacity, or I can, obviously, the city has a lot of great capacity too, and they could reach out to them if you all are interested in learning more. One other thing I want to highlight that the Missoula Redevelopment Agency has done in some of their districts to support the preservation of housing, because we know that not only the creation of housing is important, but the preservation is important, is by sort of continuing the programs that you started with the facade repair and rehabilitation to extend it to sort of life and safety code updates, right? So to get these older buildings into compliance with health and safety, today's health and safety measures. Because a lot of what we think of as naturally occurring affordable housing is just housing that hasn't been repaired or remodeled in a really, really long time. So they have an example of that too. They have that rolled out in District 2 and maybe some of their other districts. Their grant program is a lot less generous than our URA's current grant programs. They're, I think, only giving up to like $5,000. But again, they might have more activity. But that is something that you could consider as well if you feel like folks have tapped into the facade repair and rehabilitation grant and you want to move more towards making sure all of our downtown structures are sort of coming along with code. So that's another thing to consider, and you can work a housing preservation angle into that as well. So in Missoula, that program is for commercial structures plus multifamily dwellings with either 3 or 4 homes in them. So yeah, those are a couple thoughts. And then one other thing, I scanned some of the comments, the great comments that the city received on its downtown master plan, and something that I saw come up was live workspaces. And when you're thinking about vitality of the downtown, that is something that you might consider. I don't have any specific recommendations around that because I just saw those today. But again, food for thought as you're thinking about how to combine your goals for increasing vitality and bringing economic opportunity while creating housing opportunities downtown. The Missoula Redevelopment Agency has sort of one other program that might be relevant to that aim, which is they in some instances buy down interest rates. That might be less salient since the Fed has signaled that they'll be lowering interest rates hopefully in the next month or so. But that's another thing to consider. They just have a lot of great examples of what they're doing that's similar to what we're trying to achieve. And that's all that I have. Do you have any questions?
Wonderful. Thank you.
No,
Thank you.
Catherine.
Any other public comment in the room? Any additional board comments? Questions?
Can you, I assume you want this back.
Oh, sure. Did you need a copy though?
Well,
Oh, we
would you,
did go
can
look
you
at-
send me a copy of
We
that?
didn't get a copy of that.
Email it to me or whatever.
Yes, that was something that I did want to bring up during board comments is it is on our list of to-dos to meet again with EPS and Crescendo to update this document. This was sort of their first go, then we met about it last month. And they heard from us, and then we were gonna have a second strategy workshop to update this document. So I'll reach out about that and getting a copy of
I
this.
will be away from the 9th to the 27th of September. So.
Okay.
Miss the next scheduled meeting of this board, but.
Okay.
See their presentation. The next one.
Okay. Well, we'll shoot for finding a time to get that strategy workshop when as many people as possible can be there, or when all of us really can be there. So I'll find out. They might not feel it needs to happen immediately.
Oh, yeah, doesn't surprise me. You know, I'm kind of thinking probably October anyway.
Fine.
Just this.
Yeah. Well, and this would be a type of meeting where we would meet in between.
Yeah.
Like a closed comment.
Yeah,
Okay, so no further board comment, closed board comment. That's it. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
second.
This meeting is now adjourned. Thank you all for coming, and we will see you again fourth Tuesday in September at 4:30. In person or online.